10 years of living in this wilderness had taught Marcus that every day brought its own surprises, but nothing could have prepared him for the moment that was about to unfold. The scent of red earth and savanna grass damp with morning dew filled the air as Marcus' eyes caught a silhouette moving at the edge of his vision, not wind stirring the bushes, not clouds drifting across the ground, a golden form with mysterious black spots advancing toward the leopard. The sun had just risen above the African horizon, painting the Messiah Mara sky crimson as Marcus emerged from his small hut. He thought it was like any other day or so. 10 years of studying wildlife couldn't erase the most basic survival instinct, running from danger, but something in the female leopard's gait kept Marcus frozen in place. Her brilliant amber eyes weren't those of a predator. Rather, they were the eyes of a mother pleading. The distance between them narrowed to 20 m, 15 m, and 10 m. The dawn light was now bright enough for Marcus to clearly see what the leopard carried. A leopard cub that was bloodied and nearly motionless, with a deep wound on the shoulder and a leg hanging unnaturally, only the faint movements of the cub's chest showing she was still alive. The mother leopard placed her cub on the wooden porch, and when the little cub touched the hard wooden surface, it let out a weak cry. The mother stepped back, never taking her eyes off Marcus, and said, "Save my child." Reason told Marcus that he should slam the door shut and call the rangers to do anything but engage in this dangerous situation, but there was another force, deeper and more primal, that drove him compassion that transcended species boundaries. Over time, Marcus and the leopard locked eyes for eternity from the porch, and the two creatures stood before the delicate line between life and death with a gentleness that surprised him. "It's okay," Marcus whispered, knowing all too well that the cub was dying and that without immediate intervention, she wouldn't survive the hour. With slow but determined movements, he removed his flannel shirt, wrapped it around the tiny form, and lifted her up. The mother leopard let out a soft hiss that made Marcus's nerves tense, but she didn't attack. Instead, she stepped onto the porch, chose a position a few meters from the door, and laid down a silent sentinel as Marcus withdrew into the hut. As he held the quivering little body in his arms, he realized that his life had just changed forever because his fate and the fate of these wild creatures had become intertwined in ways no one could have predicted. The real story was just getting started in the tiny first aid hut. Time seemed to slow down as Marcus placed the leopard cub on the wooden table, with sunlight shining through the window onto her blood-soaked golden fur. The deep wound at her shoulder was bright red and dark crimson, with fresh and clotted blood mingled with trembling hands. Marcus took the dusty first aid kit out of the drawer, and as he dialed 3, the cub's breathing became weaker as Marcus explained the situation. James's instructions came clear and concisely: clean the wound, stop the bleeding, keep her warm, provide fluid, basic steps to keep alive from slipping away. But Marcus knew she needed more. He said, switching to emergency mode. "She's at the conservation project area about an hour's drive away, trying to keep the cub alive until she arrives 1 hour 60 endless minutes outside while the mother leopard remains at her post." Occasionally Marcus caught her gaze through the window crack, those burning amber eyes unblinking, waiting in terrifying silence for 10 years. Working in Africa, Marcus had never seen anything like this. An apex predator putting her trust in a human, the 1,000-year enemy of her kind. Warm honey water dripped into the cub's mouth, and her tiny tongue responded somewhat weakly, but determined to live. Marcus used a medical pipette to add a few more drops, his heartbeat synchronizing with each difficult swallow of the tiny creature. The roar of a car engine broke the tense atmosphere. Sarah had arrived earlier than anticipated, her Land Rover creating clouds of red dust on the dirt road. Through the window, Marcus saw her stop suddenly upon seeing the mother leopard. The scene was remarkable, a wildlife rescue specialist standing less than 10 meters from a wild African leopard without a protective fence or tranquilizer. The mother leopard looked up, but she remained in her guard position. Sarah moved with the composure of someone who had worked with the planet's most dangerous predators all of her life. As she entered the room, her blue eyes widened at the sight of Marcus kneeling next to the dying leopard cub. With the dexterity of a battlefield surgeon, Sarah opened her medical bag and took out sterile bandages, syringes, and vials. Without saying anything unnecessary, she started her work. The needle punctured the skin, causing antibiotic fluid to flow into the weak body, causing the cub to twitch in response to the Septoazole caused sudden pain, but Sarah explained that broad-spectrum antibiotics will prevent infection. Her hands worked with incredible precision, cleaning, bandaging, and stitching the wound. The male leopard attack was undoubtedly one of the cruelest aspects of nature, killing cubs to force females to mate again. Marcus looked out the window toward the mother leopard, who was still on guard, knowing that night would decide whether or not we were trying to save her cub. Sarah nodded slightly, not pausing her work, or perhaps she was just out of options, but she chose you. The sun started to set, painting the Masai Mara sky red, and the room was bathed in brilliant orange twilight, casting long shadows of the two humans and the small creature fighting for. Sarah had exhausted all options for survival, so they had to wait. "Tonight will decide," she said, packing away the medical equipment. "If she survives the night, she might have a chance." Marcus gazed at the cub, who was pitifully small in the warm nest he had made. Her breathing remained shallow and rapid but more regular, and her tiny amber eyes occasionally flickered open hazily, looking into an alien world as Sarah drove away darkness. The mother leopard was still there, her eyes reflecting the lamplight like two glittering gems in the darkness. The long night passed with the cub's weak breathing and the steady chirping of insects outside, but Marcus didn't sleep. Every hour went by like 100 years, and every time the cub stirred or made a weak sound, Marcus began to worry that she might be dying. However, when the first rays of dawn came through the window, the cub was still alive but stronger, and her eyes opened more clearly in response when Marcus gently stroked her head. A warm feeling spread through his chest, not a sense of victory but awe at the powerful will to live in this tiny creature. Outside, the mother leopard stood up tense and alert as if sensing the change. Marcus opened the door cautiously so as not to wake the sleeping cub, and their eyes met again. The mother leopard stared at him motionless as a statue of gold and black under the African dawn. Then, in a moment Marcus would never forget, she slowly closed her eyes and opened them again like a silent nod and a wordless thank you. The battle for life wasn't over, but in that moment, under the brilliant Kenyan sky, Marcus knew they had made it through the longest night, and that was just the beginning. 3 days passed like a hazy dream, 3 days of antibiotic injections, of return of wild instinct, honey water administered drop by drop, of sleepless nights beside the flickering oil lamp. For 3 days, while Marcus's world shrank to the space between his bed and the table where the leopard cub was slowly recovering, the leopard never left the porch, occasionally vanishing into the darkness only to return with a small prey, evidence of her hurried hunts between her guard duties. However, on the 4th morning, while changing the bandage, something changed in the cub's response, which was no longer a passive acceptance of care but rather a stirring and gentle resistance. Those amber eyes were now alert and watchful, and when a hand touched the injured front leg, a soft hiss escaped, not a cry of pain, but a warning, the return of wild instinct, a sign not only of physical recovery but also of fighting spirit, a necessity for any predator to survive in the harsh wild world. Sarah brought medicine and valuable experience every day, and this morning her eyes were serious as she saw that the cub needed x-rays because the broken shoulder blade hung in the air like a sentence. A leopard that cannot hunt is a leopard that cannot live in the wild. A creature born for freedom would have to spend its life in artificial reserves, a shadow of what it should be. The closest clinic with x-ray equipment was at the ranger station, which was almost 2 hours away on bumpy red dirt roads. Another issue was how to explain to a wild animal that her cub needed to be taken away, and that this was the best chance to save her. As if sensing those thoughts, the mother leopard rose from her guard position. As he stepped onto the porch, the female leopard instantly stood up, muscles tensing beneath her golden metallic fur. Tone and intention are what communicate with animals in that moment, and there was a feeling of standing at the edge of something greater than human understanding, a dialogue between species, a connection far beyond language. The mother leopard's unblinking amber eyes, which follow every movement through the window pane, created bright patches on her golden fur, highlighting the perfect black spots. Camouflage armor evolved over millions of years to create the ideal predator, with the transport box ready. When the metal transport box appeared, the leopard appeared to weigh every move. The mother leopard remained tense but showed no signs of aggression, and the cub's weak cry echoed as she was separated from the warm blanket that had become her sanctuary. The mother leopard moved along the distance between her and the humans, never going more than 3 meters. When the box was placed in the back of the car, the mother leopard stopped, head held high, ears perked, and all senses were in a state of extreme alertness. The trip to the ranger station was a nightmare of red dust and bumps, and every shake of the car caused concern about the cub's wounds. I have never seen anything as remarkable as this. A mother leopard trusting people with her only child at the clinic. A solemn atmosphere, cold, professional gestures, emotionless X-ray machines, the steady beeping of monitoring equipment in the waiting room, and a long recovery period with the hope of full rehabilitation. The surgery took 2 hours, during which the mother leopard waited at home. The cub lay in a recovery cage still asleep from anesthesia. A small brace was used to secure the injured front leg, and 1 night of clinic monitoring was necessary. Returning home alone with a strange sense of emptiness, unsure if the mother leopard would still be there. The African sunset turned the sky red, creating a scene so ethereal it made me wonder how the mother leopard knew to look for him. Why this hut among all the homes near the reserve? Maybe she had been watching for a while, learning to judge human character the way predators evaluate prey, or maybe it was just desperation. The journey home. On the way home, darkness had engulfed the savannah, the porch was empty, and there was no sign of the mother leopard. A soft call dissolved into the vast air, no answer, no shape gliding through the darkness all night long by the window under the. In the starry African sky, the waiting turned to despair when the mother leopard failed to return the following morning. The medical team's sleepless night made sure she didn't have any post-surgical fever, and she accepted some ground meat from a syringe. A true warrior was the comet as they moved the cub into the transport box with the right care and the hope that it would fully recover. On the way home, thoughts of the mother leopard kept coming back to mind. Had she lost patience and gone in search of her cub, or had she accepted that her child was dead and had reverted to the solitary life of a wild predator? As the car pulled into the yard, the mother leopard's absence became evident. There was a strange sense of emptiness. But as soon as the transport box was opened inside the house and the cub was placed on the familiar blanket, a deeper realization gradually surfaced. The mother leopard hadn't abandoned her cub, she had entrusted her child in an act of complete faith. Perhaps instinct had told her that the cub couldn't return to wildlife right away because of the injury, or perhaps she realized that the only way for her child to survive was to stay with this human who hadn't turned away when she pleaded for help. The days that followed a new routine, with remote work taking place on the dining table next to the laptop, while the cub slowly explored the hut from her warm blanket. Daily calls with Sarah and James were made, and the cub was fed finely ground meat. The door was left open that night, but knowing that the mother leopard would not return, this wasn't wishful thinking. Rather, it was respect for the decision of a creature that had trusted humans with her life. In the second week, the cub started to stand firmly on all 4 legs. The first tentative steps were a testament to a strong will to live. The first little roar echoed when she saw a bird through the window, hunting instinct awakening, and locals started to hear about the man raising a leopard cub. They arrived initially suspicious, then curious, and finally respectfully. The legend of the mother leopard entrusting her cub to a human spread throughout the villages, becoming a campfire story. Wildlife researchers also arrived with cameras and scientific questions, but no theory could fully explain what had happened. When the 3rd month went by, the cub, now named Jabari, which means brave in Swahili, had grown into a powerful and beautiful creature. The wound had healed completely, leaving a small scar and a slight limp when she ran, but that didn't diminish her spirit from a weak patient. Instead, she became a vibrant presence in the hut full of curiosity and energy. The day came to make a difficult decision. Jabari couldn't stay in the hut forever. She needed space and an environment more suited to her nature. Sarah and James had located a private reserve where Jabari could develop in a semi-natural setting that was neither completely wild nor captive. This bond couldn't be described in words. It was formed in moments between life and death. As Jabari was led to the car, a golden black shadow briefly slipped past the edge of her vision, but it was clear that the mother leopard had returned, watching from a distance as her child entered a new chapter of life. No one else saw her, and no one else heard the soft whisper of the savanna wind. The morning of farewell was emotional, with the reserve vehicle parked in front of the porch waiting for its special passenger, Jabari, who was now able to recognize signs of change. She paced restlessly in the room, her amber eyes gleaming with alertness. Carrying the scent of a wild predator, but for Marcus it was the last confirmation, a silent thank you. The car slowly drove away, taking Jabari to her new home, and as the red dust settled in the air, Marcus stood by himself on the porch, staring at the horizon where the mother leopard had vanished. One chapter came to an end, but a new one began, but the lessons learned from this incredible encounter would last forever. The profound connection between species compassion that transcends all barriers and the incalculable power of trust in the African wilderness where the laws of survival are often harsh and unforgiving. A mother leopard chose to entrust herself to human hands, and in doing so, she taught us that sometimes nature comes to humans asking for assistance, and that's all we can do, is reacting with all of our heart.